Julia Phillips. Miss Julia Phillips is a distinguished materials physicist and a member of the National Science Board from 2016 to 2018. She had a significant career at Sandia National Laboratories, where she served as Vice President and Chief Technology Officer. Previously, she conducted research in electronic materials at AT&T Bell Laboratories. Phillips is also a member and Home Secretary of the National Academy of Engineering, NAE, and chairs the Committee on Science and Engineering Policy. She oversees the biannual publication of Science and Engineering Indicators. Phillips holds a Bachelor of Science in Physics from the College of William and Mary, and a Master of Science and PhD in Applied Physics from Yale University. And Ms. Phillips will share with us on the topic of the STEM talent shortage in America. Can you hear us, Ms. Phillips?
Yes, I can.
Okay, let's welcome
Can
Ms.
I share my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. And I'm going to be talking today about some data from the most recent issue of Science and Engineering Indicators, which was released by the National Science Board and the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics in March. So it is relatively recent, although the data is a bit older than that. Just to introduce the National Science Board, it has two roles. One of those is as a policy-making body for the National Science Foundation. The other is to serve as advisors to the President and to Congress on matters concerning science and engineering policy. And it is under that remit that we publish Science and Engineering Indicators. In the 2024 edition of Science and Engineering Indicators, we showed data that demonstrate that the U.S. performs more total research and development than any other country. However, the nation's global position is slipping and has been slipping for some time as countries, particularly in East and Southeast Asia, and especially China, increase their activities. We assert that the nation's ability to compete in science and engineering depends on robust and sustained national investments in STEM talent, which I believe is your interest today, R&D driven discovery, knowledge translation, and innovation. One of the main messages that the Science Board put out going along with Science and Engineering Indicators is the importance of talent, STEM talent. And the title of the companion piece we published is called Talent is the Treasure. The conclusions are that the U.S. needs a robust and resilient STEM workforce for a strong economy and for national security. However, the nation is facing a STEM talent crisis, and strategic action is sorely needed across educational and workforce levels. While most of what I'm talking about today is going to deal with the bachelor's level and above, there is also the skilled technical workforce, which includes individuals who have less than a bachelor's degree, frequently a certification or an associate's degree. The total STEM workforce in the United States is 37 million people at the last counting. Of those, slightly less than half, or 18 million, have a bachelor's degree or above, and 19 million, so very slightly more than half, do not have a bachelor's degree and constitute the skilled technical workforce. As I said, I'm going to be concentrating in the data I show, given the limited time available, on those with a bachelor's degree. One of the very important aspects when you look at that part of the STEM workforce is that there is a very significant share of the workforce which is composed of individuals who were born outside of the United States. And this slide shows the percentage of STEM workers who were born outside of the United States. The top set of bars is for all science and engineering workers with a bachelor's degree. The next one is for those in computer and mathematical sciences, and the bottom set is for engineers. Each of those has 3 bars. The top bar is for those with a bachelor's degree, the bottom for a doctorate, the middle for master's. What you see here is that across all science and engineering fields, well over 40% of the PhDs are awarded to individuals who are born outside of the United States. And even at the bachelor's level, a significant fraction were born outside the United States. These numbers become even larger if you concentrate on computer and mathematical sciences, where approaching 60% of PhDs are awarded to those born outside the United States. And if you look at engineering, over 50%, actually somewhere over 55% of the PhDs are awarded to individuals born outside the United States. Those are fields that are of particular interest because of their importance in emerging technologies. For example, those that are called out by the CHIPS and Science Act. International student enrollment is something that we've been tracking for a long time. This goes back 10 years or so. And you see, first of all, it's broken down by those pursuing different degrees, the doctorate at the top and associate's degree very tiny at the bottom. One of the first things you see is that since 2012, there's been a very dramatic increase in international science and engineering students, which have been very important for filling the jobs in the US economy. Things leveled off then for a number of years. They dropped rather precipitously during the COVID pandemic. They have rebounded, as you can see, in 2022. But there is a reason for concern about whether that number will stay as high as it is today, because other countries have taken a page from the United States book and learned that attracting top talent from around the world is a wonderful way to jumpstart their own science and engineering and STEM ecosystems. And so in some ways, other countries have entered the competition for top foreign talent and maybe competing more effectively than the United States for reasons such as visa considerations. So this is one way, a major way, that when you look at STEM workers with a bachelor's degree and above, that the U.S. has been taking care of its shortfall in U.S. Persons, that is, those either born in the U.S. or naturalized or green card holders. And there is no guarantee between the competition with other countries and other political realities that the large flow of international students into the United States will continue to be strong and will continue to help backstop the shortfall in U.S. persons filling STEM positions. So the premise is that the U.S. needs to capture more domestic talent into STEM, and this slide shows sort of the shortfall if you assume that across demographic types, and we're talking here race and ethnicity, assuming that you want to have the population, the demographics of the U.S. population, or of the U.S. workforce, represented in the STEM workforce. And you see that there's shortfalls vary depending on whether you are talking about women on the left or other ethnic groups or persons with disabilities. The shortfall is very significant in some of those cases. And since the demographics of the United States are also changing, it behooves us to try to understand what the challenges are to attracting these individuals into STEM fields and having them become part of the STEM workforce. One of the issues that we need to deal with US students is the fact that a high percentage of them graduating from high school are not judged to be ready for college work in various STEM areas. This shows both a time sequence for each of these topics. For mathematics on the left, science in the middle, and STEM in general on the right. And you see that at best, something over 30% of graduating high school students are college ready to study these materials. So we've already taken 70% of the population out of consideration for pursuing STEM fields without a lot of remedial work, beginning at age 18, which is a late time to be starting to do that. So this quote points very strongly to the fact that we need to look at K-12 or even pre-K through grade 12 to try to address the shortfall of U.S. individuals pursuing STEM careers. This slide shows a couple of things. On the right, if you look at standardized test scores by various advanced economies, you see that the United States occupies really a very middling position. It's down there in about the middle. It's the red triangle. The average is the green, which is somewhere above that. And for a country that really prides itself on its preeminence in STEM and that aspires to keep that preeminence, this is not a good position. It has also persisted for well over 10 years. So this is a very persistent issue. The larger figure on the left shows how the students start to break out in K through 12. This is actually for an 8th grade for standardized tests. And one of the things that you see very clearly is that there is a strong difference in STEM preparedness at grade 8. This is for mathematics actually. And the test scores on are basically the higher the figure is, the higher the test score. The figures on the right side of the mountain are those from schools where a high percentage of the students are not eligible for free and reduced price lunch. That is sort of our proxy for poverty level. Those on the left are from schools where a high percentage of the population is eligible for free and reduced price lunch. Then you see the individuals broken out by race and ethnicity. And so you see that, not surprisingly, from everything we've read, that Asian students tend to have higher scores, and the others are distributed down the slope. But a huge advantage is conveyed simply by attending a school where most students are not eligible for free and reduced price lunch. You'll also see that there is only one group that is demonstrated to be proficient in mathematics at grade 8, and everybody else is somewhere between basic and even below. So clearly there are issues, but you start to see things separate by race and ethnicity, and especially prominently by poverty level. One of the correlations between test scores and performance and other demographics is shown in this slide, which is around the experience that STEM teachers have, their teaching experience, depending on whether they are in different regions of the country. Those are the kind of reddish bars. Whether they are in high or low poverty schools, those are the green bars, and whether they have minority what percentage of minority enrollment they have, which is the bottom set of blue bars. And what you see is, that's particularly impressive, is that those that are in the highest poverty schools, the teachers have the least experience. And we know that there is a high correlation between teacher experience and their expertise at teaching. So that's another, that's a strong correlation between the test scores and teacher experience. Also, minority enrollment has a similar trend. The test scores in grade 8 correlate with poverty, and this, so that was the teaching experience of the teachers. Here we have the test scores correlating with poverty. The blue bar on the right is for highest poverty. The dark blue bar on the left is for those with the lowest level of poverty. And the test scores monotonically decrease as the level of poverty increases. Looking at the effects of the COVID pandemic and emphasizing particularly the green bars, you see that the spread in test scores increased during the between high poverty and low poverty during the COVID pandemic. So those that were in the lowest percentile of test performance, or lowest percentile in terms of poverty, high poverty in other words, the scores decreased the most. Those in the highest most affluent areas decreased the least, and so that spread between poverty levels of poverty increased during the COVID pandemic. And there's been more recent work that come out in indicators that shows that the rate of recovery has also lagged for the high poverty school. So what needs to be done? The first conclusion is that it's absolutely essential to provide equal access to quality pre-K through 12 education for all students with emphasis on mathematics, science, and STEM preparation. So this has to do, and one of the highest payoff areas for that is the instructional workforce. We need experienced teachers in all of these schools and with professional development to help them become even better teachers. It's critical to prioritize STEM subjects in the subject matter being taught. And finally, to provide broader access to STEM enrichment opportunities, which tend to be preferentially available to those that come from more privileged backgrounds. Second is to reduce financial barriers to pursuing STEM careers. For those pursuing bachelor's degrees and above, there are frequently differential tuition, for example, for those in engineering areas of study rather than liberal arts, so for example. So students from a less affluent background have a higher financial barrier once they're in college if they choose to pursue a STEM career. We need to do things to incentivize pursuit of STEM careers, whether it is forgiveness of student loans for going into STEM careers, things like that are being discussed. And finally, it's absolutely essential while we address these dramatic shortfalls in the K-12 system to continue to attract and retain foreign STEM talent. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you for this talk, Ms. Julia Phillips. Do we have questions from the audience? Okay.
So, Dr. Phillips, I want to say thank you for such a wonderful, informative presentation. Right now in our national policy, education policy making, there's two kind of direction. One is say because we have significant performance gap, let's destroy meritocracy. Let's totally ban like standardized testing to take away the measurement. Another alternative is work on building the academics not only for the general public, also for Black, for Hispanic, help them build academic foundation. So the question is, in your opinion, which way is better?
Well, I mean, basically, I think the most important thing is to ensure that, in all schools, there are quality teachers, there is appropriate emphasis on the basics, which include beyond, reading and writing, of course, but also, mathematics and STEM subjects. And exposing children who may not be growing up in, and this is independent of the race and ethnicity. It is more dependent on the background in which these kids are growing up. And the school can have a fundamental impact on exposing them to possibilities through enrichment, but also making sure that they have the quality teachers and materials that they need to be able to acquire the knowledge, have the opportunity to acquire the knowledge that they need to be able to continue. Because one of the challenges with STEM is it is so hierarchical. If you don't start at the beginning or very, very early, then kids are lost by the time they're in middle school. And so my assertion is that you've got to start at the very beginning, and you have to keep building, and you have to, it's a huge task. I don't want to minimize it, but you have to make sure that every kid has a good set of teachers and an environment and the resources in the school that they need to be able to learn.
Any more questions from the audience?
One of the questions I've always asked is, why do we not see good schools in bad communities and bad schools so much in good communities? And the question that I have is this: you say that the key is to have good teachers, better teachers, but that predicates the assumption that the teachers in the bad schools aren't as good as the ones in the good school, and that the teachers are the absolute solution to the problem. My position is this: since we've been at this for about 60 years, and we don't see outstanding schools in poor communities, I suggest that school performance, that good schools are a reflection of their communities, and that high performance is a cultural issue and not necessarily something that has to come out of having better and better teachers. We tried that, and that didn't work. But the Asian community, that exception, whether divided by socioeconomic class, has a consistent level of performance. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, we've been at this. I think we have this teacher. My mom went to Soulmate. I went to Harvard. And she said, Harvard has an easy job. They take the brightest kids in the world, throw them in a room, and teach them things. That it's easier to teach a smart kid than it is to teach a struggling kid. And that the solution comes from the home, from the parents, from the culture, long before they get into school. Your comments?
Okay. Parts of what you say I agree with. I certainly, it is much easier to have a good school in an area where there are intact families and parents that understand the value of education and are willing and are able to provide certain amounts of enrichment and push their kids like crazy. I don't think those things are completely absent in the very high poverty areas. And in fact, I am mentoring some students who have just graduated from undergraduate level, who came from, really quite deprived backgrounds and from underrepresented groups in STEM. And, the drive of the parents to make sure that they take advantage of every opportunity available to them, plus some financial aid that has been available to them with minimal strings attached. In other words, it doesn't have to go only for tuition, but can actually pay for some basic living expenses and things like this, have clearly made a difference in terms of the success of those young people, even though they haven't had great schools. I will point back to the fact that there is a correlation between the experience of the teacher, the amount of teaching experience teachers in the high poverty schools have relative to those in the better schools. And there are all kinds of reasons for it. I mean, you have to attack the whole thing systematically. You cannot. But the instructional workforce is a key piece of it. And studies have shown, I don't have data here, that the single biggest predictor of student performance in any given classroom is the level of experience of the teacher. A secondary aspect is whether they have actual professional development to enable them to optimize the teaching of the curriculum that they are supposed to be teaching. Those things do tend to be better in the low poverty schools. So there is a correlation there. Is that sufficient? Quite possibly not. In a few cases, yes, but no, across the board, if you really want a sea change, you need to do a lot more than that. A huge challenge is the fact that it is state and local communities that determine the support that is given to the schools, and so you have to do a grassroots thing pretty much at every school district, also in order to effect the change.
Thank you for your very important presentation and your important advocacy. Thank you, Ms. Julia Phillips.
Thank you.